Well, I just think it demonstrates the desperation that a country like Russia needs to align itself with the DPRK to subjugate the people of Ukraine. And
General Ryder, so National Security Advisor Sullivan said earlier this week that with regards to the policy allowing Ukraine to use U.S.-made weapons to strike over the border into Russia, that policy, quote, extends to anywhere that Russian forces are coming across the border from the Russian side to the Ukrainian side. So is that consistent with the Pentagon's understanding of this policy, or has the policy expanded beyond just that kind of narrow Kharkiv region that it was initially understood to be when this policy decision was made?
yeah, so there has been no change in the policy. And really, at the end of the day, this comes down to counterfire, right? And what you saw in the Kharkiv region as Russia was conducting its offensive was the massing of forces, artillery fire, preparatory fire into Ukraine as they conducted these operations. And so the ability to be able to fire back when fired upon is really what this policy is focused on. So again, as we see Russian forces firing across the border, the ability for Ukraine to fire back at those ground forces using U.S. provided munitions, it's self-defense. And so it makes sense for them to be able to do that.
And that applies only to the border areas, or could it be further into Russia, or does that?
Again, if you look back at kind of the early days of this war, and you had Russian forces that were, and still are to a large degree, but en masse within Ukrainian occupied territory, what you saw were force-on-force conflicts that were happening within sovereign Ukraine. So in this case, what you see is Russian forces attempting to use their border as a safe zone from which to conduct preparatory fires and attacks into Ukraine in support of offensive actions. And so again, as we see those forces conducting those types of operations from across the border, we've explained, Ukraine can and does have the right to fire back to defend themselves. So again, not a change to the policy that was announced earlier. Now, when it comes to long-range munitions like ATACMS, again, there's been no change in the policy in that regard.
Rather than just Kharkiv, to be clear.
Correct. It's focusing on the strategic intent here, which is counterfire when you're attacked, returning fire. Body.
Thank you, General. If I may go back to the situation on the borders between Israel and Lebanon, obviously you've been...
It was directing American contractors to ship AMRAAM and Patriot weapons, missiles that were earmarked for foreign customers, other foreign customers to Ukraine, giving them the priority. What role does the Pentagon have in this directive, in implementing this directive or overseeing the shift of missiles from FMS customers to Ukraine?
Yeah, sure. To your point, as you highlighted, the resequencing of planned deliveries.
It's not planned.
What's that?
Planned deliveries?
No, planned. The planned resequencing of planned deliveries. So we're working closely with industry on the appropriate contracting actions from this resequencing to ensure that we're able to continue to support our security assistance requirements. So I'm not going to be able to go into any specifics beyond that in terms of what those contracting actions are, those companies are, but needless to say, again, we're going to make sure that not only are we supporting Ukraine, but that we're continuing to keep on track with those FMS deliveries as quickly as possible.
These are missiles, right? Not the
Correct.
batteries or
Correct.
round
These
equipment.
are missiles. That's correct. All right. Noah.
In reference to the policy on cross-border strikes, I just want to make sure I understand for clarity. Was the policy never geographically bound and was always focused on the intent of counterfire like you're describing there? Just want to make sure that I understand this correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the context was, again, this Russian offensive that was emanating from the Kharkiv region. And so being able to check that offensive and enable the Ukrainians to fire back and to not allow Russia to use that zone across the border there as a safe haven from which to conduct those attacks.
Mm-hmm. So changed in reference to the offensive near Kharkiv, but it was never intended just to be around Kharkiv, if I understand you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the policy here is, again, and I think, you know, the National Security Advisor put it, you know, in great words here, in the sense that it's not about geography, it's about common sense, right? Being able to fire back if you're fired upon. You go to Tom.
Thanks, Chairman. Abdul Malik Al-Houthi, the leader.
Earlier this week, Staff Sergeant Gordon Black was sentenced to 3 years and 9 months by a Russian court. You know, first question, I guess, is does the Pentagon have a reaction to this sentence? And then the second question I have is, has anybody from the Pentagon been in contact with Staff Sergeant Black?
Yeah, thanks. So obviously something that we continue to monitor closely. Both the Department and the Army are in contact with State Department, which has the lead, as I'm sure you can imagine, on something like this, given a U.S. citizen being held in a foreign country. So I'm going to have to refer you to State Department for any further questions on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
The U.S. soldier being held in a Russian prison. There is video now emerging, and what he says on that video. Let's get right back to Martha Raddatz tonight. Martha, what more do we know about the case tonight?
David, Staff Sergeant Gordon Black's mother warned him not to visit his Russian girlfriend, but tonight he is sitting in a Russian prison charged with stealing from the girlfriend. Black had sent a video greeting to his mom and dad from Iraq in 2009, but the latest videos shared by Radio Free Europe today are from the Russian girlfriend's TikTok account that shows Sergeant Black in uniform there before leaving for Russia, saying, among other things, that NATO is pretty aggressive and that he understands Russia's point of view, saying they want to defend their country. David, the Army is now launching its own investigation to see if Black was targeted by Russian intelligence. David?
Martha Raddatz back with us again tonight on this. Martha, thank you.